of the. So what have we read in the first part of the great stone face? That Ernest is there. He believed in the prophecy that his mother told him that one day there would come a person who looks the same as the face on the mountain, and he would be a good person, he would be a kind person, and he would come here to this village, right? So Ernst, right from his childhood, he has been waiting. He has been waiting for that person to turn up, and so he's waiting for that person, but right now he has never seen him. There were two people who came. Were the two people who came, who they were people thought were the great stone face? Who were they? One was a merchant, gather gold, yes, and the second was the general, right? What is it? Blood and thunder, yeah. So these two people, they came, and everybody thought that they were the great stone face, but they were not noble, they were not kind. One was there very rich and was proud of his riches. The second was a very brave person. He was very courageous and he was very proud of the achievements there. But yes, Ernest was one person who really did not believe that these people could be what? The great stone face. So he's still waiting for the great stone face to appear. Now he has grown older and is still waiting that yes, this might happen and the prophecy might come true. So we're going to start reading, and yes, who's going to read? Let me see who wanted to read. Many years passed. Ernst was now a man of middle age. Angel, turn on your video, please. To his neighbors who never suspected that he was anything more than an ordinary and familiar face, he was only a humble and hard-working, though thoughtful person. But what about the old prophecy? Was it ever fulfilled? Let us read and find out. Now, Ernst was not such a person who was very popular or known among the people, but he was someone who was very ordinary, right? He kept on working. He had these beautiful thoughts. He was a kind-hearted person, but no one thought him to be extraordinary or very special. But one thing was there, he really believed in the great stone face. He thought one day that person is definitely going to come. He kept on waiting. Okay, so Angel is going to start reading. Angel, you can unmute yourself. Please read.
Yes, ma'am. The years hurried on and brought white hairs upon the head of Ernest, and made wrinkles across his forehead and furrows in the cheeks. He was an old man, but not in vain. Had he grown old, more numerous than the white hair on his head were the wise thoughts in his mind. And Ernest has ceased to be obscure. Unsought of for undesired had come the fame which so many seek. He had become famous beyond the limits of the valley. College professors and even the active men of city came from far to see the converts with Ernest. And he received them with a gentle sincerity and spoke freely with them of whatever came uppermost or lay deepest in his heart, all their own. While they talked together, his face would brighten unawares and shine upon them, as with a mild evening light.
Okay, thank you, Angel. Very well read. Now, yes, next person be ready who wants to read. What about Ernest? He was growing old. And with age, what was happening to him? The hair on his head, it was turning white. There were wrinkles on his face and cheeks. He was becoming old. But yes, if he was getting old, he was also very experienced. And he had more than the white hair on his head. He had wise thoughts. That means with age, with experience, he had become a very wise person. But there is also one thing that happened was he was not a stranger now. in the valley, people, they knew about him. They knew about Ernest and how wise he was and what a nice person he was, that people would come to him. They would talk to him. They would ask him for advice, right? And when they spoke, when they were there talking to him, he would feel so happy and that glow would come on his face, right? So he was not a very proud person. He was a very humble person. He was a helping person, and his wisdom, his age, his experience, he was using it to help others, right? So he was not very proud of the fact, but people were becoming aware of this man who was very wise, and he would give, and he would interact very nicely with other people. Yes, so can we continue? So what has happened? In the first part, Ernst was a young boy, he was a child, he had heard a story from his mother. Now he has grown old. But one thing that is common when he was young and when he's old, he was still waiting for the great stone face, because he wanted that when I am here on this earth, when I am here alive in my lifetime, the great stone face should come so I can see that person. Okay? Yes, so can we continue? Yes, would like to read next? Anybody? No one is responding here, so I think so I will only have to continue reading. Okay, yes, Sadhika, you can turn on your video and start reading. Yes. Okay, Anshika, it will be your turn next, okay? Yes, let us start reading. Yes, Sadhika, I can't see you. Can you start reading? While Ernst had been growing old, please read. You can look at the screen and read. Yes, I'm sharing the screen. You can read from there. No, I think so. She's not going to read. Yes, Anshika, where are you? Do you want to read? Yes, Anshika. Yeah, come on. Let's hear you. Very nice.
While Ernst had been growing old, God had granted a new poet to this earth. He too was a native of the valley, but had spent a greater part of his life in distant cities, pouring out his sweet music everywhere. Neither the great stone face forgotten for the poet and celebrated it in a poem. The songs of this poet found their way to Ernst. He read them after his customary toil, seated on the bench before his cottage door. As he read, he lifted his eyes up to the mountain.
Okay, continue.
"O great stone face," he said, "is it not? It
Is
is
not.
not this man worthy to be your likeness?" The face seemed to smile but did not answer.
Okay, very nice. Thank you. Now, what has happened is that while Ernest had been growing old, there was a new poet, and that poet also lived in the valley. And like Ernest, he had also heard about the prophecy of the great stone face, right? In fact, his poetry was so nice and so good that it was, like far and wide, that name and fame spread. People heard about his poetry. And they reached Ernest also. And he had written a poem about the great stone face. So he was reading this poem after he had done his work and sitting outside his cottage. And Ernest would keep on looking at the great stone face as if he was taking inspiration. He was getting encouragement or getting motivation from that face. Okay, right? So right now also he's talking to the great stone face, and it seems the great stone face understands him. Is not this man worthy to be your likeness? He's writing about such nice things. He's written a poem about, like this. And do you think he can be the great stone face? The face seemed to smile but did not answer. Now, it happened that the poet Though he lived so far away, he was also in the same valley, but quite far, had not only heard of Ernest, but had thought much about his character and wished to meet this man whose wisdom walked hand in hand with the noble simplicity of life. So, as it is, Ernst's fame was spreading far and wide. People knew him as a wise person, a noble person, as a simple person, right? He had these great thoughts, he had these great ideas, and people would talk to him. And now, Ernst, one day he's read about this poet, he's read his poetry, and he thinks that this could be the great stone man. And he wanted to, like now in the other way also, what happened? The poet had also heard about Ernst and he thought, I should meet this man, right? So both of them wanted to meet each other. And he wanted to meet someone who's so noble, who is so simple, and who was such a kind soul. So one summer day, therefore, he arrived at Ernst's door. Who arrived? The poet arrived, where he found the good old man holding a book in his hand, which he read, and then, with a finger between the leaves, looked lovingly at the great stone face. So here, both of them met each other. Who have come face to face now? The poet and Ernst, right? Both of them wanted to see the great stone face. Both of them believed that, yes, he would make his appearance. And Ernst thought that this poet who's writing such nice things, it's quite possible that this person could be the great stone face, okay? And then the poet came to meet Ernst. And what was Ernst doing? He was reading a book and he was there. And he looked lovingly there at the great stone face, looking towards that, the mountain. Good evening, said the poet. Can you give a traveler a night's shelter? So can you give me shelter? Can you give me a place to rest? Gladly, answered Ernst. And then he added, smiling, I think I never saw the great stone face look so hospitably at a stranger. He would look at a stone face and wait for a kind of response. Okay? And for him, it seemed as if the great stone face was giving a response. So when the stranger came, and it seemed as if the great stone face is smiling. Okay, right? Is it clear to here? Yes. So who would Ernst look towards for answers, for inspiration? Yes. Can I get a response here? Who would he look to? Yes, he would look to the great stone face. So yes, so how was the great stone face an important part of Ernst's life? Not only did he hear stories, but he wanted to see that man, and he really believed in the great stone face. It is looking over the valley. The great stone face has blessed the valley with fertility, right? And there are so many noble souls who are coming. He's met this poet and he thinks that, yes, everything is happening because the great stone face wants it to. And he will keep on looking at the great stone face for an answer, for a response. Now, when this man has come, when this poet has come, it seems that the great stone face is also smiling. Can it happen? Can it happen? Great stone face smile? Yes? So there's, who do you think is the poet in this picture? Who do you think is the poet? The man standing? And who is this? This is Ernst. Who is there in the distance? What is this in the distance? That is the great stone face. What is the expression on the great stone face at the moment? Angry, annoyed, surprised. Yes, great stone face is smiling. And right, so Ernst thinks, oh, great stone face has given me a nice response. Let this man come. Okay. The poet sat down beside him and he and Ernst talked together. Never before had the poet talked with a man like Ernst, so wise and gentle and kind. Ernst, on the other hand, was moved by the living images flung out of the poet's mind. Right? What made Ernst so impressed? Right? How was he impressed with the poet? Because of his thoughts, because of his ideas, because of the poetry that he wrote. because of the things that he did. So he thought, this man is there writing and giving such beautiful ideas, such beautiful expressions. Likewise, the poet also was impressed that I've never met a man like him. So kind, so gentle, so wise. What were the qualities that the great stone face would have according to the prophecy? Can I get the answer? Yes, according to the prophecy, what would be the qualities of the great stone face? Yes. It would be noble, right? It would be noble, would be kind, and with the same face. Yes, yes, would be kind man. Was moved by the living images flung out of the poet's mind. When we read poetry, immediately an image comes in front of our mind. When we read the schoolboy, what was it? Yeah, so the schoolboy here, right, comparing himself, that I'm like a bird in a cage, and right, that evil person eye there, the cruel eye of the teacher looking at him, and he's there tired and exhausted and does not want to go over there, wants to wake up in the by the like the sound of the bird and go there. Images, living images. They're not exactly living images, but very lively images. They appear to be alive. And where do they come out? They come out of the mind of the poet. And poets and writers, they're so blessed, right? They're so blessed with this quality of expression. And the way they write, they make so many things come to life. Okay, so the poet was impressed and Ernst was also impressed, because both of them were wise men, right? And one thing that was common, they were not proud of their achievements. In fact, Ernst was totally unaware that I'm such a nice person, I'm such a wise person, I'm such a gentle person. But uski kindness and gentleness, everybody knew about it. And people from very far away, they came to meet him, to talk to him, to seek advice. So the poet has also come to meet Ernst. Okay? Is this clear? Any doubt, anybody? Any questions? As Ernst listened to the poet, he imagined that the great stone face was forward to listen to. He gazed into the poet's eyes. And, as they were talking, as they were discussing, and Ernst was always looking towards the great stone face. And he felt as if, oh, sun rahe, oh, what is the poet telling? What are they discussing? Who are you, my gifted guest? He asked. The poet laid his finger on the book that Ernst had been reading. You have read these poems. You know me then, for I wrote them. So who are you? He didn't know it was a poet, right? Because and then the poet says, see, you're reading my thoughts, you're reading my ideas. I wrote these poems, you know me. Again and again, Ernst examined the poet's features. He turned towards the gravestone face, then back. So he's looking at the stone face, he's looking at the poet. He shook his head and sighed. Why are you sad? Inquired the poet. Because, replied Ernst, all through life I have awaited the fulfillment of a prophecy. And when I read these poems, I hoped that it might be fulfilled in you. I read the poems, I was so impressed by their thought, and I thought someone who is there so noble and kind, and someone who's so wise could be a stone face, right? But now he's also expecting that this man should have a resemblance also, right? So he's looking for that. You hoped, answered the poet, faintly smiling, to find in me the likeness of the great stone face. I am not worthy to be its likeness. No, I can't be the great stone face because, yes, right, I do write beautifully, but I am not such a great person that I can be the great stone face. Okay, right? Clear? Yeah, so here it is. They're not still found a great stone face, or have they? Let's see. And why not? He asked Ernst. He pointed to the book. Are not those thoughts worthy? तुमने इतने अच्छे thoughts लिखे हैं, तुम्हारी इतनी अच्छी poetry है, तुम क्यों नहीं हो सकते great stone face? You can hear in then the distant voice of a heavenly song. So poetry is so beautiful. You can talk about so many things through your poetry. But my life, dear Ernst, has not corresponded with my thoughts. My life is not, I've had great thoughts. I've had them in my mind. I put them on paper. I wrote poetry. But जो मेरी real life है और जो मेरी thoughts की life है, they are different. Okay? I have had grand dreams. Grand dreams means big dreams. Big dreams. Okay? I've had grand dreams, but they had been only dreams. Sometimes I lack faith in my own thoughts. Why then, pure seeker of the good and true, should you hope to find me in the face of the mountain? What does this mean? Is paragraph ka kya meaning hua? Can you tell me, anybody? Please explain it to me. Why does the poet think that he cannot be the great stone face? Yes? What makes the poet think he cannot be the great stone face? What's wrong with him? He's a wise person. He writes so beautifully. So why can't he be the great stone face? Yes, he says, I have written poetry. I have written beautiful thoughts. But what is there? I have had only dreams, and maybe in my poetry only, I am a good person, but I have not, yes, because he thinks he's not the noblest person. So it's humility is there. Humility has to be there in a person who is great. So he thinks that you are there, you're looking for goodness, you're looking for truth. So why you think that you'll find it in my face? Right? Because sometimes what I say, I don't believe in them myself. Right? So we talk about so many things. I might be giving a big lectures. Let's be good. Let's be kind. He's not so good, and he also does not resemble the stone face. Okay, that is one thing. He does not resemble the stone face. What else? He says that I have big ideas. I have these big thoughts, but sometimes even I don't believe in them. Right? Even I don't believe in my thoughts. So if I don't believe in my thoughts, my ideas, why am I writing about it? So he thinks that I am not a true person, that I am not a true person, I am not an honest person. Okay? Yes, this is one very, very important thing. So here, I lack faith in my own thoughts. I don't believe my own thoughts. Right? So why would you think that I am the face of the mountain? What is the face of the mountain? The great stone face. Okay? Is this clear to here? Have you understood? Okay. Vedanti would like to read. Yes, Vedanti? Yeah? Would you like to read? I'll unmute you. Please continue reading.
At the hour of sunset, as had long been his custom, Ernst was to speak to a group of neighbors in the open air. Together he and the poet went to the meeting place arm in arm. From there could be seen the great stone face. Ernst threw a look of familiar kindness around upon his audience. He began to speak to the people what was in his heart and mind. His words had power because they agreed with his thoughts, and his thoughts had reality and depth because they harmonized with the life which he had always lived. It was not mere breath that the preacher uttered, they were the words of life. A life of good deeds and selfless love was melted into them. The poet, as he listened, felt that the life and the character of Ernst were a nobler strain of poetry that he had ever written. His eyes filled with tears, and he said to himself that never was there so worthy a sage as that mild, sweet, thoughtful face with the glory of white hair diffused about it.
Yes, thank you, Vedante. Yes, so look at this here, isn't it? Right, look at this paragraph again. So where did Ernst and the poet go? What was the custom or what was the routine of Ernst? Right now, it was he would talk to a group of neighbors and he would talk about general things or give his advice about life or anything that then he would talk about. Okay, so the poet and the who was there? Yes, and Ernst, they both went hand in hand that meeting. And Ernst, here, look at this. What about his words? What about his manner of speaking? What impressed the poet? What is the way in which Ernst talked? How did he address the audience? Yes, it was, yes, his words, they were true, they were real, and whatever he said, he believed in. Okay, so if I'm talking about goodness and kindness, equality, right, and understanding, I should follow those things myself, isn't it? Right? Okay, isn't it? Then only I will become a good person. But sometimes we are not like that. We talk, we give big lectures about kindness and goodness, about being true and leading a good life. But many of us do not follow that. And when the poet was looking at Ernst speaking, he saw that he felt that truth in his voice, right? Because the words which he was speaking, they were the same as the life that he lived, right? What problem did the poet find about himself? That he at times does not believe or follow the things that he writes about, okay? Right? So they were not words, they were the words of life. Beautiful line. A life of good deeds and selfless love was melted into them. And he had spent his life helping others. He was there a kind soul. The poet, as he listened, felt that the life and character of Ernst was a nobler strain of poetry than he had ever written. Nobler, better, greater. Even he could not write such beautiful poetry the way Ernst was speaking. There was so much of purity, there was so much of sincerity in his voice. His eyes filled with tears, and he said to himself that never was there so worthy a sage as that mild, sweet, thoughtful face with the glory of white hair diffused about it. Okay, right.